What's up, world? Serge here, and I got a couple questions for you. Do you care about your website's analytics? Do you prefer free, open source, and privacy focused software that's super easy to deploy? And do you ever wish your tools that you use every day had the context of the analytics instead of just looking at the dashboards like Google Analytics and all that? If you answered yes to any of those, I'd like to introduce you to Counterscale. It's a super easy way to set up and deploy an analytics engine on Cloudflare. And once you configure it, you drop a script into your website, and then you're off tracking your visitors. It's built by Ben Vinegar, and we were chatting last week, and he had an interesting idea of taking all of this data and all of this context and moving it into places that that context is important for. And so if you're working on a feature in Cursor, having this additional data will help. You can see it tracks basic device, country, browser, all the information that you would care about. And what I did was build an MCP server for it. And I'd like to show you that. So you can see I have a prompt here to set up analytics for worker URL Counterscale dev. I have to be a little bit explicit here because when you deploy your own Counterscale instance, you will have your own worker URL. You could set up a custom domain for it, but because this is Counterscale.dev, it was confused. So I had to be very explicit there, but essentially it's calling setup analytics tool with worker URL that. And now I have this tool called list sites, which should give back the 3 websites that this tracker is set up on. Perfect. And so now I can be like, which devices are users accessing the homepage on? Claude 4 is thinking, but get top devices is the tool that got called. And you can see this being really powerful with additional MCP servers like Sentry, for example. If you're working on an issue and you want to see, like Sentry has their own data around the impact of those issues, but it'd be really cool to then attach more analytics to it. And yeah, you can be like setting up, figuring out what referrers are coming to your website, and then setting up little banners or special promo codes or whatever for different referrers, and being able to do all of that in one tool, which is Cursor, is pretty freaking awesome. And so how it works is you set up your MCP server like this. You pass it the MCP server. So this is deployed on Cloudflare right now. This is open source, so you feel free to deploy your own MCP server and mess around with it. You can run it locally. There's also a really cool inspector that Model Context Protocol ships with. And if we were to take a look at this inspector here, I am authenticated with the local version of this MCP server, and you can see all the tools that are there. And how that works is if we look at the MCP server, we have this Counterscale Analytics MCP that gets set up with the worker URL, and all of the tools are here. But this Counterscale Analytics client is essentially an HTTP handler for endpoints from the worker website, which is a React Router remix website. Each of those little components has their own resource. You can see them all here. So device. This under the hood calls the analytics engine, which is Cloudflare's analytics engine with the Cloudflare account ID and API key. But I wanted to make it really easy for you to connect to your Counterscale instance. And so we just have the worker URL, and React Router has this way of fetching raw data from the endpoint. So instead of like the loader returning props, it returns data in a way that that's structured. And our analytics client takes that, and you can see there's a parse React router data, which I didn't write. Shout out Cursor. I verified this with the website to make sure that the data was the same, but it's essentially taking this raw data. We can take a look at it here. Network device data response. Yeah, so that's the raw data, desktop, mobile, and it's paginated. So that's that. If you want to check it out, feel free to use the MCP server that I have deployed against your Counterscale instance, or check out this PR, deploy it yourself. And yeah, thanks for watching. See you later.